Hey everyone, so sorry about last Monday not having a podcast, and this Monday, because it's Wednesday now, also didn't have an episode. My bad on that. I actually did paint my wall just to get rid of the paper logo stuff. And I got some new equipment, but for some reason it's not working today. I've just had equipment issues, scheduling issues. Last week, all week was fall break, so kids are home from school, changes the schedule. So I just wanted to bounce back this week with, I'm going to try to make it up to you and do 2 episodes. But today just wanted to do an episode on breakups and being single as a TradPro, traditional progressive woman. A week ago, before last week, anyway, I broke up with my boyfriend, and that was, breakups always suck, but sometimes it's just necessary if you have like a mismatch of needs and just, things are not harmonious as far as like goals and pace and just all the energy and all those things. So anyway, that to say, I wanted to do a little episode about it because it made me think about how kind of non-traditional it is to be single and a mother and wanting to date and wanting to have like that permanent companionship relationship and have those traditional family values, but also being super progressive politically and like how that all works. I thought I wanted to address that. So breakups for me make me revisit my priorities, what I want in a partner, what is gonna fill my cup and be that long-term bond that is going to really feed my soul and hopefully feed the other person's soul as well. But like that mutual benefit, that reciprocity, and, just that rethinking, regrouping, kind of just getting back to your orientation as a single person and my priorities of family values within that mix of being single. It's kind of a little bit like an unfulfilled part of the traditional marriage, forming family, motherhood. I think that MFM, marriage, forming family, and motherhood are kind of the 3 pillars of a traditional woman in terms of like a role, like that instinct to nurture, have kids, raise kids, have a partner, be a great partner and support to that person, form a family, have that central family unit, and everybody is working together and everybody has a role, and it's working like a well-oiled machine, theoretically, right? So that's the goal. But I was thinking, like, even though the priorities are out of order for me and for many women today, like you're supposed to get married and then, have kids and then like build your family from there. But for me, I was married 20 years ago, but it kind of is right now like motherhood is first and at the forefront, and then marriage is like in the future tense, right? It's a goal. And forming a family, I've already kind of formed a family, but we have that missing role, that one missing component of our family unit. Partner for myself, but also like a role model for my kids, and just that support, mutual support and reciprocity for my sons to kind of see as well. So anyway, they might be out of order. It's a reshuffle, it's a remix, but it's still traditional because the goals are the same. The goals are still that one lifelong partner. The goal is still that strong family unit. The goal is still being an amazing, devoted mother. So, and the mother part I can do maybe with or without the other 2 components to some degree, but it does put a little bit of a strain on that as well, because I have to be all the roles while being a mother. I have to also be provider, protector, and the nurturer, and, you know, forming the family and holding everything together. So that kind of, you know, I mean, that's tiring, that's draining, and that's the whole reason why some women, such as myself, are traditional in that goal of, I want to get to that place where I have a supportive partner and where I can be that support to a person. Just because I'm not there yet, or just because one relationship and union didn't like go all the way or work out on all levels, doesn't necessarily mean I give up from that goal. So my 1, 2, 3s of breakup recovery, I guess, are: number 1, rethink what I want in a person, that partner, that, you know, role in the household, that role for me as a woman, my sexual partner, my co-parent, all of those things that happen in a relationship. Just rethinking, like, what are my priorities? And my big takeaway from this last relationship is this next time I'm going to put compatibility before chemistry, because I think a lot of times, especially if you haven't been in a relationship for a long time, it's just like you just want to dive in the physical stuff, and you kind of maybe don't have all the important conversations and, you know, check all the boxes. And I think that it's important to have a lot more talking and checking compatibility before checking chemistry in terms of physical touch and all those things. So anyway, that was kind of my takeaway. My goal for the next relationship, my next relationship, is to find that person who is super compatible, and, you know, sexual chemistry and that kind of thing can come in just like many different ways. So it's not like this checklist of like, what is your type? And so just thinking like my type, like physically is usually what people mean, like tall, dark, handsome, whatever. Or, you know, you like a more lean build or a more muscular build or this or that, a certain personality type. For me, my type, like right now, is like my rethinking is like my type is someone who I share as much in common with, even outside of the physical aspects, as possible. So common goals for family, you know, family oriented, common interests as far as activities, getting out, going and doing things, you know, just like exploring the world and being able to honor each other's expression and kind of individual interests and that kind of thing, while still you know, doing as much as possible together as far as partner stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that. Like, number 1 is rethinking, like, what did I learn from this past relationship, and combine that with like all the other relationships. Like, is there a pattern here that I'm like not paying attention to? And the one thing that stood out for me is like really, really establish that compatibility before exploring the chemistry. So I know probably a lot of people are like, that's boring, but hey, you can still like establish you can still talk about and like banter about your sexual chemistry too. You well exploring the compatibility. You don't just have to like, you know, jump in bed. You can still talk about that though. It's not like that has to be like not mentioned. And I think that's one of the things that differs in TradPro, traditional progressive women are going to be proud of their sexuality and sex positive and not like, you know, a non-sexual person. And a lot of times I think the traditional conservative woman is kind of like not sexualized. Like, you're supposed to be just kind of sitting there ready for whenever the man wants your body, but like, we don't really have needs. That is not like my perspective at all. And I think that in a progressive mindset, for sure, everyone's needs sexually and financially and in terms of, environment and food and just like all the things that come with living, body, mind, and spirit, I think are important. And so, like, as a woman, doesn't mean that we don't have sexual needs. But also, like, let's not note to myself, like, don't put that first just because if you haven't had any, like a real person in a while, like keep your self-play active, keep your libido strong, keep all those things going so you're ready for that. But check yourself as far as compatibility before sharing that with a person. So that's number one, rethink, like what are your needs? Number two is for me, for breakup recovery, number two is like 1, 2, 3, rethink, recover. And so number two is like refocusing. So rethinking what I want and kind of recovering that like focus on goal for a partner. Then number two, refocusing my attention on motherhood, because those three things are what? Marriage, motherhood, family, forming a family. So motherhood is a big one. I mean, that's 1 out of the 3, and I already have that going on. So like just pouring my energy all the way into that. Not that I give up any energy when I'm with somebody, but just kind of like circling back to like, are there any things that being with somebody has taken time away from? You know, how can I meet my kids' needs more completely? Is there anything that I'm missing? Just like really focusing on that. And that's always been my number one focus, is the motherhood part. So I don't necessarily feel like I'm ever slacking or losing that sort of whatever category of life or whatever from the trad, marriage, motherhood, and family. Have not won in the marriage category yet, but hey, these things can move quickly if you find the right person. So anyways, so motherhood is my focus now, just kind of like refocusing to that, while I meanwhile have rethought everything as far as what I'm wanting and just kind of like save that in the back of my mind and stay ready. Like if that person knocks on my door or I come in contact with somebody who really meets all those compatibility criteria and we want to like jump into life together and form that union, then cool, like I'm ready for that. Like I already know what I want. I've rethought all of that. So then I can refocus my attention on the kids and paying bills as well, because that's part of being a mom when you don't have a partner, is also the providing and protecting and making that stable home. And then number 3 is to just stay ready, like with all the things that you want to give to a partner, that I want to give to a partner as a traditional woman, or having that desire to fill a traditional role, or to like submit to my partner, to please my partner, to nurture my kids, to just be that like mom, wife, homemaker type of role. I think that it's important to stay ready. Even if you don't have a partner, stay ready. Like keep your cooking skills practice up. Keep, obviously you still have to clean your house, and don't just like let everything go to shambles because, well, nobody's popping in. And so like, who's gonna know, right? Like keep all that stuff up, keep your skills on point, because just like an athlete, you can't play in a game if you haven't practiced. So in order to stay ready for your partner and that special person, just staying practiced, like cooking, cleaning, nurturing. And part of the practice too in staying ready is, again, like your sexual health and libido, and like staying ready to be active with a partner. I believe, for me anyway, is helpful to really nurture my self-play, like, just make sure that I am not like just being completely unfulfilled, like, toys, all that kind of stuff. I think that is important when you're single, because that then doesn't leave as much of a void for like, well, nothing's happening, then somebody just like touches you and you're like, woo, like this is the person. So yeah, just like fulfilling yourself, so you also know like how to tell your partner like what you need and like what works for you. And yeah, so you also know like how to please them too. I was reading this book, I think it's called Male Sexual Health, which is kind of an itch. I mean, it's, obviously I'm not a guy, but like you want to read about that. There's also a book I just finished called Girl Boner, and it's about, you know, vulva owner sex basically, and versus penis owner sex is the male sexuality, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like male, female, but just like the parts that you have, how to use those, if it's yours, like for self-play, also how to stimulate a partner's parts as well, whether you're with a girl or a guy and you're a girl with a girl or a girl with a guy or somewhere in between with somewhere in between, like what, you know, all of those things, like the mental part of it, the physical parts of it. I just think it's important to stay ready. So those are my three, they're not really, well, I guess kind of 3 R's of breakup recovery, like the rethinking what you want, refocusing the attention on the kiddos, right? And staying ready for all of those things like keeping your skills honed, cooking, cleaning, self-play. So anyways, again, like in the traditional, I would say more colonial version of trad, because traditional, really, what is tradition? Tradition, if you're counting just like the last 200 years, last 500 years, the last 5,000 years, the last, you know, 100,000 years, like we've, human beings, Homo sapiens, with our same brain size, have been around for so long that I kind of, when I think of traditional, it might be a little different than when other people think of traditional. When I think of traditional, it's like going back a lot further than just like the Middle Ages or something, or, you know, couple thousand years ago. So anyway, I think like women, mothers, wives, like families, partnerships, relationships, going back a long time in history. And even things like self-play, like that stuff, toys and stuff, they've been around for a long time. I'm just saying. So, but in kind of like what's become the norm, this TradCon, trad wife type of thing, like recently, has been more, you know, TradCon conservative, right? And that's kind of been more like Little House on the Prairie type of traditional. And that's not really what I mean by traditional. I mean that nurturing, supportive, loyal, domestically skilled person and role. But anyway, that kind of like Little House on the Prairie, the TradCon model is kind of like doesn't acknowledge women's sexual needs or interests beyond just like having babies and, again, like kind of donating your body to your partner for their pleasure, but like it's not really talked about like how do you please yourself if your partner's out of town or whatever. Like, so I think that there's just a lot of unnecessary unhappiness and misery even in partnerships and marriages sometimes because that hasn't been cultivated and nurtured and understood, even, to be quite frank. So our society hasn't done a great job at that. And especially in the TradCon, like in traditional, very conservative, very repressive upbringings as a girl, you don't ever want, you know, it's like a sin to touch yourself. It's a sin to think about it. It's a sin to have fun in any way. It's like you're there to make babies and serve the guy, period. And that is not what I believe, because traditional, there are those components of it that I think are really healthy and that I personally find happiness in. But as a progressive woman, I don't subscribe to the repression and the kind of oppression and depression that can cause. And then also, like, I support personal choice. That's the progressive part. Because I think that I can have personal choice to be trad and still be progressive, but I also think other people can pick and choose to some extent, like where do your values lie? Like you can be things by degrees. You don't have to be like all or nothing. So like you might want to be progressive in terms of your sexuality. You might want to be traditional in terms of your cooking. You might want to, just like so many ways to remix it. So speaking of progressive with sexuality, and taking care of your sexual health, whether I'm single or in a relationship, I personally stay on birth control because I have been raped in the past, and I know that there are ways to get pregnant without your consent, unfortunately, for women. A guy can't get pregnant without his consent, obviously. But if you're a woman and you are fertile, like, you can get pregnant without necessarily being in a loving relationship or choosing that. And so that's, for me, it's just kind of insurance and peace of mind. And so that's, I know that if I know I don't want a pregnancy in this moment, then that's what I choose to do, is stay on, birth control. Do what works for you. I found out the hard way that you can actually get pregnant while you are on your period as well, because you can actually have just one ovary ovulate, which I didn't even know was possible, but here we are. So anyway, like, don't necessarily just lean on myths and tiny little bits and pieces of information. Like, really understand your body, understand your needs, and understand like what you need for your mental health too. Because sometimes it's not just all like a physical process. I like, the next one, actually, like, for peace of mind personally, because I don't like to have to remember to take a pill. That doesn't not necessarily have anything to do with like efficacy or rates or percentages or whatever. It's just like, you do what works for you, because it is your body and you have to answer to yourself ultimately for your health. Now, if you're in a partnership, obviously, there should be a discussion about what your mutual goals are for kids or pregnancies or not, or whatever, procreation. But single women, and if you're not, committed and in that way, definitely want to have all the facts so that you can control your experience and have that peace of mind. So anyway, also, one other thing, like, when I'm single, I don't necessarily think about like, hookups and stuff like that, especially at my age. I'm turning 48 next month. So if there is not a future, like, what is the point? That's kind of where I'm at. What is the point if, we don't really know this at the beginning always, like, if, this person is for sure or not, but we know if there are enough like compelling reasons and compatibility to like give this a try, right? And then I say within like 3 months or so, you're gonna have a pretty good gauge, at my age anyway, about whether this is like a no-go or super strong potential. Could be sooner than 3 months, but I'm just saying, like, that's my experience, is that I don't necessarily feel like I'm staying ready for a committed, long-term loving relationship if I am just, playing with partners casually. So that's just my process. But, I tried that in the past. It just doesn't work for me, but some people it works great for. So, you do you. But yeah, if there's no future, like, what is the point in spending the time, the energy, the sacrifices that you have to make just to share your life with somebody, your time and space? So yeah, anyway, so TradPro women, again, we are not like the type of people, because we're progressive, we are not going to be launching universal mandates that force people to do certain things. However, the idea of supporting personal choice is something that hopefully everybody can be on board with. And yeah, like, be happy with our own choices, even if we're in the progressive side of politics. You can say liberal, you can say left, whatever. If you're in that camp in some way, you should still be supported. If you want to be a nurturer and a more traditional homemaker, domestic partner, that should not be like a thing that you can't do just because you're trying to be ultra feminist, because choice feminism supports choices. And I, for one, am happy with my choice to be a single at this moment, single, marriage seeking, progressive trad mom. So anyway, till next time, and I will try to be consistent moving forward. I apologize for that little lag. I have been trying to get some better equipment and more slick stuff set up, but I'm just me, I'm just one person. So sometimes I have little oh, the lighting isn't working today, the equipment isn't working, schedules aren't working, and then sometimes it's just okay, after all, I am a trad mom, so screw the podcast. I have to just do what works for my kids and the household in this moment. And so that's kind of why some of that fell between the cracks. But I do apologize for my listeners, and thank you so much. We reached 100 subscribers, which is the first check along the ladder of moving upward and onward. So yeah, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. I don't like to even say that or beg or whatever, because don't like it if you don't like it. Don't like it, If you like it, then hit click or whatever. If you want to subscribe and you want to get those notifications, yay. If you really don't want to be bothered with the notifications, if this is not for you, that's cool too. I am, again, supporting what works for you, and I hope that you can support what works for me too. So have a good one. Until next time.